Our vision is really, it was always conversations in the code, linked to the code, rather than snapshots of the code. But what's changed in the past 2-3 years, and really acceleratingly, like since last fall, at least for people that write Rust, is that now conversations are becoming sort of the source of our code. Like we were thinking we'd write all the code and have conversations in it. Now conversations are the beginning and code comes out of that. It's a downstream artifact.
Welcome to Syntax. Today we have Nathan Sobo from Zed on the show. Nathan, previously from Warp, and then he was also at GitHub for 9 years, is now the co-founder and CEO of Zed, the text editor that I use every single day, one of my favorite applications on my computer. So, Nathan, welcome to Syntax.
Thank you very much.
Would you like to get into, I know I gave a little bit of a backstory on who you are, but maybe like you could dive in just a little bit more of how you ended up at Zed?
Yeah, I mean, I have been obsessed with the idea of building the ultimate tool for software development, basically for myself for a very long time. I think it was right when I graduated college, the year after, 2006, that I'd been using TextMate, which was hot and new at the time. I'd used Eclipse. I'd used Emacs. Hadn't used Vim at that point, although that did come along later. And I just wanted to build a tool that combined all the things I loved about these various editors into one product. And I completely underestimated how difficult that would be to do. And it took kind of until now, I think, to really even begin to get close to, basically bringing the speed of TextMate with the features of something like Visual Studio Code. And then also bringing this collaborative dimension that came along eventually. And that was based on my time at this company, Pivotal Labs, which was a pair programming shop. You would show up and there'd be 9 to 6 with a 1 hour lunch break, just pairing all day long.
Wow.
Really?
And back then we would plug 2 keyboards into the same machine, with 2 keyboards, 2 mice, and just like work through problems together, code together. And that taught me so much. I became such a better software developer so rapidly. But I always wanted a tool that could replicate that experience that we had in this shared office, like over the internet, and turn the internet into that whole experience. And Zed is as close as I've ever gotten until what comes next.
Yes. Yes. I can't wait to get into what comes next, because I got a preview of it, and it definitely like it makes sense to hear you say that about pair programming, given what I have seen in this. So that's really super, super cool. So you pick Zed, and was Rust, because Zed is built on Rust, right? From the ground up. Was Rust the choice initially, or did you land on Rust somehow?
Well, once upon a time, I talked the founders of GitHub into hiring me to build an editor called Atom.
Yes.
Some people may remember.
Oh,
and in the process of creating Atom, we also created this framework called Electron, which is still around and probably running on all of our machines in some shape or form, eating way more RAM than the apps that it's running really justify. The big idea with Atom was we wanted to make it hackable, and we wanted it to run on every major platform. And so it really seemed like if we could build on web technology, which was already something people were familiar with, was really a flexible technology. You could load CSS, and everybody knows JavaScript. If we could just figure out a way to masquerade a web browser as a desktop app, we would sort of achieve our goal of this flexible, hackable system that ran on all the 3 platforms. And we did. But unfortunately, the trade-off that we made, the devil's bargain that we made, was that the overhead of the browser and sort of the abstraction that it presents, which is this kind of lowest common denominator, common standard that needs to run in a backward compatible way on all these different browsers. Well, although that is reducing down, but still, it's like it really put a limit on the performance of and the user experience that we could yield. And so after Atom sort of ran its course and Microsoft acquired GitHub, and I was sitting there using Visual Studio Code, I just wasn't happy. Like, I
Mm.
just couldn't see a future where I continued writing all my software in this web browser masquerading as a desktop app. Just the performance wasn't there. The aesthetics weren't there for me. This collaborative dimension, even though they did introduce live share, like it never really worked as well as I wanted it to. Um, and so that led me to one inexorable conclusion, that we had to get closer to the metal. And luckily, around that time, Rust, you know, yeah, it was there were we were working on it for quite a while before we started Zed. And as we worked on it, Rust hit 1.0, async await got introduced. Like, Rust really matured as a viable option. And after being covered in blood from learning the language, we were finally traversed the learning curve and figured out how to build a UI framework, which really didn't exist at the time.
And if you want to see all of the errors in your application, you'll want to check out Sentry at sentry.io/syntax. You can sign up today and get 2 months for free. Sentry is just a really incredible tool for not only tracking your performance, making sure your application has no bugs, but even just seeing what goes wrong when something goes wrong, because things go wrong all the time when we're coding. And you don't want a production application out there that, well, you have no visibility into in case something is blowing up and you might not even know it. So head on over to sentry.io/syntax. Again, we've been using this tool for a long time and it totally rules. All right.
I didn't even know how to begin building a UI framework, because if you've tried Rust, the ownership rules, the borrow checker. There's quite a few constraints. It was really relearning how to do desktop app development from the beginning and kind of reinventing it.
Yeah.
Um,
Like, can we talk about that? The UI thing just blows my mind, because you think if you're going to build a text editor, something as simple as like line wrapping is a pain in the butt, right? And then like a text editor has like underlines and things that are overlapping. And if you look at VS Code, they throw a lot of that out of the window as well. A lot of it's just absolutely positioned over top of each other in many layers. That seems really hard. So like, why would you think that's a good idea to build it from scratch? Because it's not like there was something already there where it's like, here is a text box, here is a background, here is like a text node that you can use, right?
yeah, I mean, we started with, I tried a couple different approaches. Like, at first I tried, maybe we could use Rust in the core of this thing, and then we'll wrap it in Electron. And so
Yeah.
all the really heavy parts will be in native code, and then I won't have to solve the UI problem. But it was just like, performance went out the window as soon as we had to deserialize JSON coming out of this native core or whatever. So finally I got to the point where I'm like, okay, it's a metal graphic surface.
Hmm.
And back then we didn't have agents to just tell us how to do it. It was like digging up tutorials from the guy that wrote Shader Toy
Yeah.
on YouTube and stuff, learning how to write very primitive shaders, learning how to build a renderer for a 2D app. And then, of course, all the CPU bound stuff that was designed to deliver the data to the graphics processor. But like, for me, the key insight was just like all those layers and all that abstraction that the web developed to give people something to program against that wasn't a shader comes at a real cost, right? Like, and ultimately all those things that I felt like were getting in the way. So by bypassing all of that and going straight from our program to the graphics processor, we really reduced the problem down, not from this sort of, I'm staring at the dev tools in Chrome, like looking at the profiler, looking at all these little slices of time that I have no idea what's going on inside of, and watching the garbage collector run, and all of this nonsense, style recalculation and reflows, and just
Yeah.
having no control to having complete control. And ultimately, I decided that, like, even though it was really hard and we had a lot to do, if we had control, we would be able to deliver. And the goal was you receive a keystroke and you have pixels on the next VSync of the display so that there's zero perceptible lag.
Wow.
And I knew if we had the control, we'd be able to achieve that goal. And what is it, 6 years later?
Yeah.
Here we are.
And this is available, folks, for you to use, gpui.rs, if you'd like to use the UI framework. Is this the exact framework and just made available from Zed?
Yeah, it is. Right now, it's available under a permissive license. It's still in the Zed repo. It's not exactly like, what 37 Signals did with Rails, where they really made it this big project that everybody could use. Like, it's open, it's available, but we're not exactly bending over backwards to worry about building this big ecosystem around it because Zed just moves too fast. Like, so up until now, we've just sort of kept it as a crate inside of Zed, but it's there. You can use it. People have even spun up forks. People have built all sorts of apps on top of it. I saw a like quant trading app, high performance quant trading app, doing crazy trading graphs and stuff like that built in it. And there's a bunch of things out there.
Yeah. One thing I've always appreciated about Zed is the speed at which it operates in general. And I know that seemed to be a big component of building this editor. But Zed has always felt so lightweight while being so full featured to me. So it does make sense that would be born out of the death of Atom and the arrival of Electron. Wes, were you an Atom user?
Yeah, well, kinda, because like I was the Sublime text guy. Like that was my whole thing.
Yeah.
And I used Sublime forever. And I dipped into Atom here and there, but I never went whole hog on it until like VS Code came around, and it was like VS Code started to get that big momentum. I was probably like 11 years ago, if I were to guess.
Yeah. I really liked Atom because I always liked designed apps. So for me, it was Atom was the first text editor where I felt like everything was designed. When I went to VS Code, it felt like a massive step backwards in terms of the user experience of it all. But then it just became like the thing to use. So it was like, okay, I guess I'm using VS Code. Yeah.
They had so many more resources they were pouring into it. And the reality was they were a more mature team with a more mature code base. Like they were doing Visual Studio Online. Eric Gamma had already created Eclipse before that. And we were just like noob web developers making Atom. Like we didn't really stand a chance in that matchup. And I think also a really critical thing that we just missed was TypeScript. And I think VS Code really rode to success on the back of TypeScript and the language server protocol that they built around it, and just that whole evolution. And we were still trying to build an editor in like a dynamically typed. At the beginning, it was CoffeeScript. Don't even get me started. That was not my choice. It took, by the time we realized that the language server protocol, which grew up around Visual Studio Code, was going to be a big thing, it was just kind of too late for Atom, I think. But no worries. Like, just that all served as the training ground for what we ultimately applied to Zed.
Yeah. Would you, like, given what you've gone through in terms of having to build a whole UI layer and everything in Rust, if you were starting over today, July, I'm not going to date this because if you were starting over today, would you still pick Rust?
Summer of 2026.
Yeah, summer of 2026.
Would I use Rust again?
Yes. Yeah.
100%. Absolutely. Yeah. I briefly looked at Zig, and I don't know enough about Zig, and it wouldn't have been a choice at the time when we started Zed. I don't think it wasn't far enough along, but I think for the nature of the complexity of what we're building with Zed, and it being an open source project where we're merging pull requests in from strangers on the internet, having the memory safety, having really strict type safe security around everything we're doing is critical. And I don't really know a lot of other options that give us that kind of on the metal axis. My one gripe about Rust continues to be that the compiler is slower than I would like.
That's what
I'm
Scott
always
said.
saying
Yeah.
that. I have said that, and people in the comments are like, "It's not slow." I'm like, "Oh, come on."
It's slower than I would like,
Yeah.
but the language is incredibly well designed. I love it. So yeah, I haven't really seen anything emerge that would be a better alternative for the problem we're trying to solve.
Sick. So you mentioned you're taking in contributions from outside into Zed. I'm curious about, like, we always in this day and age need to ask about like AI usage in building these things. Like, what's AI usage for the Zed team look like, and what are some of your processes look like in building?
We use AI a lot. Um, at least I do, and I think it varies across the team. And obviously, everybody on the team is an engineer back from the days when you didn't have an agent to write any code for you. You were typing it out, and you were lucky if you could get an autocomplete. So I'm really glad that I have that pre-training of my neurons in place to really understand software. Like I think it would be a different story if I were getting my start now. Some things would be easier, and then certain kinds of lessons might be harder. But I write a ton of code agentically these days, and I use it in the pull request review process. When I'm reviewing pull requests, it's amazing to get some help interpreting what the heck is going on in this diff. One thing we don't have a ton of is like this dark factory thing where there's like loops and things going on super autonomously. We have a little of that happening, like just getting a head start on stack traces and things of that nature. But for the most part, definitely my usage of AI is extremely engaged and reading the majority of the output coming out of the thing, and being very engaged with it. So, but it's a big part of my workflow. It's changed the calculus a bit. Like there's the volume of contributions. We're having to get much more clear about what we're going to accept and not. And, the review load is quite a lot to keep up with, especially with a bunch of other priorities going on.
Yeah.
But I don't know, we get like 40 something bugs a week fixed via external contributions. I'm sure a lot of those were facilitated by agents. I don't begrudge people for getting leverage, especially in a code base as complex as Zed. You do have to insta-close the slop ones that someone's not putting care into what they're doing. But yeah, it's a big part of it, and I don't have anything against it.
Can we ask about you guys building a text editor in the age of maybe we don't even need a text editor?
Right.
And I don't want to say that like snarkily, but like
no.
Like, what do you think about that? What do you guys, are you moving to something, or like, what do you think there?
Yeah, I used to call what we were doing building a text editor.
Yeah.
And now I really think about what we're doing more as building a user interface for interacting with software. And text is a big part of every dimension of that, even more so now that agents are involved, right? Like if you think about all the problems of interfacing to text, like text has become even more powerful than it has ever been now that language models are this big part of our lives. Language is made out of text. And I think people underestimate how difficult it can be to build a good user interface around text. And I also still think that reading code and navigating through code with the facilitation of agents is going to remain a pretty important part of building real software that's not just tossed out vibe coded, or
Yeah.
we're just going to run a loop and torch tokens on this until maybe it's approximating correct.
Yeah.
I think the craft of software is going to involve humans, I think multiple humans, engaging with fire hoses of text. um, and those fire hoses of text interleaving through source code. So yeah, I think a lot of I don't know that necessarily the latency of typing a key inside of a source file and getting a response and a autocomplete popping up and choosing from your algorithmically determined list of options
Yeah.
is as relevant anymore. But a lot of the skills and lessons that we learn solving that problem, I think, apply even more so to this new world that we're
Yeah.
entering.
Whatever that tool looks like. I agree as well. Like, and I'm so glad that you guys are building this, because like we need wicked awesome. I would say I'm not going to say primitive, but like we talked to the Pierre computer guys, and they're building sidebar tree structure of files, like arrows, like drop down, and diffs, and they built like the fastest one ever, and everybody needs it in this age of being able to just type in the box whatever you want. We need these amazing, like well done, low level, like you said, on the metal primitives to build this type of stuff. So I'm glad that like not everybody has like thrown it out the window and it's like, all right, we're just gonna vibe code absolutely everything and it's all gonna be in the browser. Like you need people who care about this type of stuff. So I'm stoked that Zed is still here for that.
Well, and I think it's worth mentioning that we're building something new.
Yes, I was going to say
Ooh.
this, Wes, almost kind of unknowingly, because Wes hasn't seen Delta, and
No.
I want to applaud you, Wes, for that lead-in, because it's a great lead-in to talking about Delta, which, as the Z.dev describes on the early access, that it's a version control system that records the work as it unfolds and keeps every change connected to the conversation that shaped it. I think that sentence really undersells what I saw from Delta. So, Nathan, I'm going to give the floor to you to maybe tell us and describe to Wes a little bit about Delta.
Yeah. So, I mean, what you're reading on our site as of the recording of this podcast, which I think by the time of publication will have said a lot more, but is really about Delta DB. And Delta DB was about a year ago where our head was at about the problems we wanted to solve in general and with respect to the emergence of agents, which is really about filling in the gaps between commits and enabling this new kind of collaboration that we've been thinking about since the very beginning of Zed. The plan with Zed from the get-go was build an environment worthy of the world's best developers, where the most discerning, high-skilled developers would want to spend their time writing software, and then give those developers an environment to connect to one another sort of in the process of writing the software itself. Because I always viewed this diff review, I worked at GitHub, I loved my time there, but it never felt, back in the day, like it was called social coding. It never felt that social to me. I mentioned earlier that time of plugging two keyboards into a computer and like working directly with somebody in the code as we were writing software. That always felt like social coding to me. And it, to me, felt like a tools problem that we weren't able to have higher fidelity conversations sort of directly connected to the software we were writing. And we were instead just tying our conversations to these comments that were posted on this web page that rendered kind of slow. And they were tied to these snapshots. And really, like, it's all because of Git. It's all because Linus Torvalds built this tool for like helping people email patches to one another on the kernel mailing list. And everything was sort of designed around snapshots and ran at the pace of email. And it always just felt like a higher fidelity conversation would be possible if we could drop below that floor of commits. And so DeltaDB has been our vision for giving basically every version of the software as it evolves an address that you can recall it, talk about it, and you can drape over that level of tracking the ability to comment on any part of the code at any time, and thus be able to have a conversation sort of in the code base as you're working on it. Over the past year, the vision of DeltaDB, as we built it, as we started building it, of course, we weren't going to shove it into our million-line plus IDE with hundreds of thousands of users on day one. We built this little reference client for it. And yeah, over the past year, that little reference client has become essentially a brand new product. So we're going to become a 2-product company. And yeah, so we have DeltaDB, and we named the new agentic agent-focused editor that we built around it Delta. And so in some ways, Delta looks at first glance like a lot of the other agentic development environments that you see out there. But when you peek below the surface a bit and start using it, I think you're going to discover a lot of the power that is enabled by it being built around this more sophisticated version control system that drapes on top of Git. It's still designed to interoperate with Git. And you really don't think about DeltaDB as you're using Delta, but what it enables is a new way to collaborate. And yeah, our vision is really, it was always conversations in the code, linked to the code, rather than snapshots of the code. But what's changed in the past 2-3 years, and really acceleratingly, like since last fall, at least for people that write Rust, because before then agents couldn't really write Rust, is that now conversations are becoming sort of the source of our code. Like we were thinking we'd write all the code and have conversations in it. Now conversations are the beginning, and code comes out of that. It's a downstream artifact.
Yeah. So you're sharing like the entire agentic conversation, like that is stored in your history of Delta?
Yeah, we have a Delta level. So every single token that flows in, every prompt, everything that happens is sort of captured continuously as it's flowing in. And what it enables is you can start this conversation, attach clones of your repository to the conversation, share a link with a member of your team, or if you set up a GitHub app or whatever we eventually evolve into, you can sort of broadcast it to your team. Hey, I have this thread that I started with an agent, and anybody else can pop into that thread with you, and they'll have the same work trees cloned down to their disk, and we do a conflict-free sync of every single edit. So you can have a copy of the exact work, like it's in Git, like a work tree is your own personal thing.
Yeah.
If you want to collaborate, you got to commit and push. DeltaDB backing this whole thing means like every participant in that conversation with the agent, or multiple agents, because you can switch between them, has a clone of the code that they can touch and manipulate, and it will all be synced across all the machines in real time.
Oh man, that's cool. So
Wes, it rips. It rips. And some of the things that you might not know from this is that like every single line of code, you can determine like which agent wrote that code specifically.
Blame.
Like, which model. It is like a model blame is really what it is.
Damn it, Opus 5.
And you can annotate responses. It's really, really sick.
The people listening right now are probably trying to place where this will live in their thing. Like this is like, does this replace GitHub? Does this replace Claude Code or Open Code? Or like, is this is the chat app, but also the history?
We're not aiming necessarily. I mean, long term, I would love to replace GitHub, and I think there are a number of contenders to that prize. But I think short term, I think it will be a really good complement to whatever Git hosting provider you have in the very short term, because what it enables is something that a snapshot-based collaboration can't really provide, which is just the ability to share a thread with somebody. And like if you share a link in Figma, you can just dive right in and see what the designer is doing and comment
Yeah.
on it and just interact
And
right
see the
then.
history.
Or follow.
Or
Yeah.
you can come along a day later and maybe they're gone and you can still sort of pick up. And that's this continuous experience that we're imagining, where you, rather than kind of chatting with an agent all by yourself, having it stamp out these snapshots, downstream artifacts, pushing them up to a server that's hopefully online that day, and then having someone try to load those massive diffs in a web page that can't even render them because it's using web technology that can't scale, and having a conversation with your team now on this inscrutable diff that like maybe you didn't even understand as it vomited out of this agent at, fire hose speed. All of that seems like kind of just not an efficient way to work anymore, especially in this paradigm. Our vision is more and more, maybe you get something started, then you pull your teammates into that conversation where they can interrogate the agent with you, have a conversation with you. You both have access to the agent and the entire context window leading up to that moment, and the code that's, cross-referenced with all those moments.
Yeah.
And it's just a continuous experience where the collaboration takes place sort of in the process of writing the code and work continuously with it. At the end of that, you can still like open a pull request and have CI run and merge and do all those things. But a lot of the conversation that you might have had in comments on the diff, if you could get it to render, you would have already had, and you'd had with the benefit of the very agent and all the context and planning and that went into that code existing to begin with.
Yeah, I often think about how much is lost in the conversation about how you got up to something, right? Like Stack Overflow's trying this like Stack Overflow for agents right now, where when the agent learns something or when it cracks something, like write it down somewhere, because somebody else is going to have to go through that process in the future. And wouldn't it be nice if that history of you getting up to that point would be visible? Or even just like you're looking through some code, why is this built like this? Well, hopefully they leave a comment, but if not, you can blame and look at the history of how you got there.
Yeah, I completely agree. And there are two big pieces of Delta DB that are like underlying the experience I'm describing. One is conflict-free replicated work trees. And that is sort of starting from some particular Git base and building forward from there. Because we're tracking that all in such a fine-grained way, we have a very nice, fluid, open, comment on anything, anywhere in this real time or asynchronously. You don't have to work in real time, but it's like the system doesn't impose any, it can be synchronous or asynchronous. The system doesn't impose it on you. It's whatever makes sense for you and your team. So there's that, conflict-free replicated work trees. And then this other big dimension that we're working on is this Delta level understanding of the repository as a whole. And what that's going to enable is the conversations taking place in each of these threads that have their own work trees on them to be aggregated together into this global index where we're essentially turning your code base into a scaffold for all the conversations that you might want to have, or like a canvas. And so it adds this like metadata layer to the code where you can sort of in any state of the code that you can see, whether it's committed or not, you can attach an annotation and then be confident that in any other version of the code base that character or range of characters that you marked is visible, it will be able to be retrieved. I don't know that we might ship the work trees stuff slightly before that, the repo stuff, but it'll be following soon after, or if I can really crank between the recording of this podcast and when it comes out, it'll be out there.
Sick. Yeah. It all makes so much sense to me. And when we were at JS Nation and Amsterdam React Summit, I was a part of like a panel on like the future of UI and everything like that. And one things that we landed on in that panel was like pair programming and pair prompting needs to become more of a thing. There's too many decisions you're making. There's too much decision fatigue, right? Before we used to make, 10, 20 decisions a day in regards to maybe even much less than that, like large decisions. And now we're making tons of, it's constant barrage of answer this question. And just the amount of value that you'd have from bringing someone else into that process cannot go understated. It's like something that like I'm so missing. And I think about so many instances on like projects that I'm working on or CJ's work, like it would be so much better to instill that layer of not just pair prompting, but this pair workflow. I'm really excited for this to exist in the world.
Me too. Yeah, I mean, and again, I think sometimes people hear pairing and they freak out because it's like, you mean I'm going to have to talk to somebody? And I mean, the answer is maybe, because I think you're right that like it used to be that you could look at a diff and the diff of sort of was a reasonable proxy for the conversation that needed to happen and the alignment on the decisions. But now, like, the deciding is all that we do, like you're saying, right? And so by the time you're looking at the 10,000 line diff, and you could try to break those down into smaller diffs, et cetera, but like in the limit of that, the smallest diffs you can have are deltas, right? Like bring somebody in on the conversation itself. Like that actually is the true source of our software. It's not the source code anymore. And so how can you really claim to have an effective review if you're not pulling somebody into that? And yes, you can like staple a transcript and attach it to the pull request or something for someone to look at later. But why not just make that conversation itself collaborative? That's what we're after.
Yeah.
The work tree stuff is kind of interesting. Like DeltaDB, it says on the website, virtualizes the work tree, so spinning up a new agent branch is effectively free. Before I have my second question, can you talk about how that is technically possible?
Yeah. So we have our own. It's a database, DeltaDB.
Yeah.
We have our own B tree implementations and hash array map trees, and then those ultimately write to some underlying backing store. Depending on, in the client, we are currently using SQLite, but that's fungible. But it's sort of our own abstract representation of the entire file system underlying your tree. Like we're not critically dependent on the file system. We model the file system. And we do that for a couple different reasons. One is it lets us make it a lot more lightweight. Like we use copy on write persistent data structures. So clones are order one operations for us. You can get that on some exotic file systems, but it's not really something that's like universally available and good. So we just decided, kind of like the same decision we made around the web browser. It's like, let's just own this. Let's take total control.
Mm-hmm.
And then another reason is we're able to make it conflict free. So, we have a surface representation of this tree of files and all their contents. But underneath that surface representation is a bunch of distributed systems foo that lets us, have multiple replicas of this thing and people manipulating it on their own schedules concurrently.
So my Scott sense is tinkling here. Did you build a sync engine then? Is that what you did?
Yeah, that's that's a part of it. Yeah.
Scott, they built a sync engine. Get back here. I don't know where he went, but Scott loves sync engines. Okay, so that means that any change ever that anyone has ever made is done.
Sorry, Wes, my
order.
dogs are going nuts, so I got to bring them inside. I'll be right back.
Okay. We'll talk about sync engines in a second. But that means that because every single Delta, I understand the name now, you can just replay every single one and then there would be no conflicts. Is that how it works?
Yeah. Now, of course, if you're collaborating asynchronously, we could, if we wanted to, like collate together all of the deltas of people collaborating asynchronously, and you would get some convergent result. Everybody would see the same mishmash of stuff slammed together. So obviously, like on a semantic level, there's still the notion of a conflict. But if you're working together synchronously, or if multiple agents, more importantly, are working together on tighter timescales, the conflict-free nature of it is really helpful. Essentially, it's giving the illusion. And we also do like mirror it down to the file system. But for us, the file system is just kind of like a user interface. Like we have the source of truth like in our database where we fully control things and have the efficiency guarantees and the abstraction and the eventual consistent semantics that we want. Then we mirror that down to the file system to give, if you want to run your compiler, or if an agent that doesn't have access to DeltaDB wants to interact with it. Ultimately, the illusion that we're creating is that this work tree exists on n machines at once.
Okay. And is that like a mesh of computers, or will there be like a DeltaDB server that's like the main boy?
So we're launching delta.dev, which is going to be our collaborative platform that hosts everything. But the algorithms are designed to be, very, I don't know how you describe it. Like, they don't depend on a central synchronization coordinator in a critical way.
Yeah.
But it just turns out that it's the best way for us to deliver a really reliable, solid, good, clear user experience. It's also the best way for us to monetize this, because it's always been the plan of Zed to build a service that lets people collaborate.
Mm-hmm.
So for now, at launch, it's a centralized architecture for both of those reasons that just make it stupid simple to go to delta.dev. Yeah, so we have a desktop. Like Delta is a desktop app that you can download, and can read from your file system and do all the same things that you can do in Zed with respect to native privileged access and the fastest that we can possibly give you. And we also have a web component of it, which is basically the same code base compiled to WebAssembly, targeting WebGL, like graphics surface. And that means you can share a link and give somebody a URL on delta.dev that they can drop in on, and without even downloading anything, auth with their GitHub and be collaborating with you.
Yeah.
Whoa.
It
Wait,
rips.
so
wow.
hold on. The entire the interface is built in like Rust in the UI that you built.
GPUI, yeah.
GPUI, but then you compiled that to WASM and have a web component that you can drop into the web, but the UI was written in Rust.
Right. So it won't be terribly slow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So it's back to the browser, just no HTML. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. And the browser this time, before we brought the browser to the desktop, that was the Atom Electron era. We're going full circle by bringing the desktop to the browser, kind of like bringing the fast tech to the distribution channel, and just making it convenient. Really, the browser is about convenience. And we are going to want to encourage people, download the desktop app, like every dual, like linear, right? Like they encourage you to download the desktop app, and there are benefits to that. But if you're willing to run in our hosted cloud provider, and the cool thing about I was talking about the work trees. Yeah. And, so if you're using the web, then you're obviously going to have to use our hosted runners. But if you're using the desktop app, you could use your own computer, and we can actually mix and match in the same thread. So you could have somebody running stuff on their own computer, and then they could share a link, and someone joins from the browser, and they're running their turn when they submit on a hosted runner, and they can go back and forth, actually. Like, I don't quite,
That's cool.
It's going to start simple, but like kind of the sky is the limit in terms of the flexibility we have and of moving the code around to be worked on in the appropriate spot.
Mm-hmm. That's really cool, man. I've been thinking about this, like, this is not related to this, but I've been thinking about like future of UI, And everybody's talking about like I did a video on just like generated UI, or like some people are talking about it will just be streamed in. Do you have any opinions of like, would that ever be a future? I know games kind of already do that, but like just some UI generated and simply just streamed to a thin client.
I mean, the first thing I'm going to say about UI is I think we're going to have a lot less UI,
Okay.
because
Yeah.
the ultimate user interface is basically language.
Yeah.
And, for the longest time, for the last, whatever, 50 years, 40 years, like the only people that could really use language to talk to a computer were people like us, software developers. And even then it was like pretty grueling, brutal process of memorizing a menagerie of commands and flags and programming language
Semicolons.
syntax
Yeah.
and all of it,
Yeah.
right?
I was trying to explain to my 9-year-old the usage of brackets and semicolons, and I was just like, this is really wild. Yeah.
So I think now that natural language is like opened up as a way of interacting, like it's such a superior means of expression over essentially like these gestural user interfaces that we've been confined to use in the previous era. Like it's really just, yeah, it's sort of like the if you couldn't talk, I guess you'd have sign language. So I don't know, but like, I think the most sophisticated user interfaces, the problem with them is they started to approach sign language, which was really hard to learn. And so we were kind of in this common denominator of, yeah, fairly crude gestural interfaces. And I think as language becomes cheaper and we get better at building user interfaces utilizing text and language, it's going to take over more and more of the user interface. But then I still think there is a place for graphics. Like it's why Delta's a graphical app and not a terminal agent. Because I do think that, yeah, graphics and, subtle use of images and icons and progress bars and things that
Yeah.
are not confined to a,
A
mono,
terminal line.
monospace terminal grid
Yeah.
still have tremendous value. And so I think in that context, absolutely, are we going to have, yeah, even like Mermaid is in Delta, like a very early example of that. And I think we're going to be adding more capability of that sort over time of like, yeah, Mermaid is this markdown-esque, it's like the markdown of diagrams or something, right? Like the
Yeah.
syntax the agent can token efficiently generate to build a little flowchart or whatever it is you need in line. But yeah, why wouldn't that extend to where gestural interfaces are appropriate? Like, why wouldn't you let the agent sort of assemble that on the fly? But I also just think you can accomplish so much with language alone.
Man.
Totally. I agree. That's good. I'm glad you said that, because I've been on this like, what does the future of UI kick go for in the next last like 6 months? I've been in talks and talking about MCP UI, and some people think the browser is going to go away, and it's somewhere in between. So I always like asking people that whenever I get to chat with them.
It's funny, like when I forget what website I was trying to navigate. It was maybe like for a summer camp for my kids or something like that. I was trying to figure out, and like their website was just like awful and really hard to navigate and understand. And I just finally was like, or it didn't actually take me long. I just fed it to my agent and Delta. So can you read this and tell me, just answer my questions? Like, I don't want to browse. I want to
I don't want this interface at all. I
Yeah.
just want to do the thing that I want to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think a lot of UI is converging, and everybody's kind of going after it from a different angle. But I think we're converging on these. You see the same app over and over again. I mean, I think one unique thing about Delta is we know a lot about how to build efficient interfaces for text. And so like we don't model the conversation as a chat.
Yeah.
It is a chat, but it's a document. And that means you can move your cursor around inside of it. And when you put your cursor in, anything that came out of the agent, whether it's a command that it ran or an edit that it made to your code, or a nested markdown list with 17 different options lettered A through Z with numbers and letters and like, right? I got sick of remembering the letter of the option that the agent wanted me to follow. And so what we let you do is you just move your cursor around inside all that rich text freely. And wherever you want to annotate, you just start typing. And it immediately like lets you annotate right there. So that's an important part
I'm
of it.
so amazed by, I mean, the fact that when you all first showed me Delta, I was immediately impressed with the fact that it wasn't another Codex / any of these apps that, like you said, they all look the same. Here's your projects, here's your chats, here's your chat window. And to some extent there is that, but like it is different. It is fundamentally different. And I think that takes such a different brain to like, what does this actually look like? Surely we can't just be having a chat GPT chat interface for every single code base where you're just chatting at it. And I think this, like, in my experience with the tool, was really impressed by the capabilities there.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it was just born out of the experience of spending a ton of time trying to write code with agents and building what we wanted, or trying to reduce the friction we ourselves were feeling.
Yeah. And it feels like, where, you wanted to create Zed, so you had to create GPUI to solve those problems. Wanted to solve these problems of working with agents, and you have a whole version control system and all kinds of new collaborative tools and interfaces. So, it takes people like that to think outside the box, and I'm really stoked for the audience to give Delta a try. I'm stoked for Wes to give it a try, honestly. Wes, you want to pair program with me on some stuff?
I'm in. I feel I remember this now. I tried to sign up for it when you sent me the link, and I hit some Google Forms issue, and I forgot it to go back to it, but I just put request early access on there, and it worked this time. So
we can get you the binary. And the binary, obviously we're recording this before the launch date. It's getting ever less alpha and ever more beta. And yeah, we'll be launching the beta and starting to let the first people just from the internet in, sort of around the publication date. Yeah. So today.
Sick. So, folks, head on over to, you said this will be at a new URL. It will be at
delta.dev.
Cool. Head on over to delta.dev. Nathan, is there anything you wanted to hit that we didn't touch upon here?
Well, you told me that you wanted me to share about what I loved, or something that I loved unrelated to.
Yes. Well, that's what I was going to get into next.
Shoot, okay.
Good. No, not shoot. Perfect lead in. This is the part of the show where we talk about sick picks and shameless plug. So a sick pick is anything you're enjoying in life right now. What is your sick pick?
Can I have two?
Yes.
As many as you want. Yeah.
So yeah, the two thoughts that came to mind. One is my keyboard. It's the Keychron Q11 here. I have two of them on my desk because one, when it's not raining, I take out my deck. But what I love about it is it's a mechanical keyboard. Let me show it to you properly. But it's not weird, right?
Yeah.
Like if you were to put this thing together, it looks normal, and it doesn't have like an ortho-linear layout or any of that, like probably really ergonomic stuff that I cannot get my hands to learn. But it lets me separate my arms. And it has mechanical key switches, and it has programmable firmware. And so I'm able to map the right or the left space bar to command. So I'm not curling my thumb under, just getting some control. And then like using agents to program the QMK firmware. To like make it light up. I light up the F keys in a certain way so that when I'm coding at night, I like know exactly where they are. I love it. It's a great product. Keychron.
I don't think I've seen a split that is normal looking. All split keyboards are all crazy, and they're all really hard to get used to. Yeah,
exactly. And my problem is like inevitably as a founder, I'm always like on an airplane flying somewhere, and then I'm on my laptop again. And so I'd find like as soon as I'd build the muscle memory for like the ortholinear domed
Mm-hmm.
crazy thing, I go back to my laptop and then I couldn't use it there. I don't know. I just don't have, some people are great at that, like switching UI. I'm very bad at it. I like my muscle memory is very one path. Yeah. So that's the technical recommendation. And then the non-technical recommendation, something recently in my life that I love is yeah, growing up, my dad would listen to like the worst jazz. Like it was like, the smooth jazz, like the kind of stuff that you would listen to, like you hear
Yeah.
in the elevator, or like at the dentist office or something like that. But a little over a year ago now, I like flew into, I actually was going to Mississippi for Christmas. My girlfriend's mom, visiting my girlfriend's mom for Christmas, but we flew through Louis Armstrong International Airport or whatever, in New Orleans. I'm like, oh, Louis Armstrong, like I want to learn more about jazz. And I've kind of, with the help of AI, which knows so much about like this catalog of jazz, like yeah, really honed in on like kind of 1955 through 64, really starting with Blue Note Records, which was
Mm-hmm.
they were one of the first labels to put African Americans like on the album covers and not be racist jerks. And they gave the musicians time to practice, which was like a rare thing at the time. And they really valued artistry in the musicians. They weren't after just like what would sell. They wanted to find kind of the artistic essence of the music. And yeah, so it just served as like a great entry point into a new understanding of jazz that I never had. Takes more patience because I just think the music is a lot more sophisticated than like AC/DC or whatever. But it's something that I've really come to love. So I figured I'd give you two, like a nerd one and a cultured one.
That's good.
Yeah.
I like that.
So, any album in particular you want us to check out? Because you would not believe that you are the second guest in a row to sick pick jazz.
Oh,
No
wow.
one has ever sick picked jazz. Dan Abramov, who we just had on the show, sick picked a Thelonious Monk album. So
Nice. I love this. Well, the first track of it, especially Grant Green, Idle Moments. It's like slow, bluesy, just like got so much mood and atmosphere.
cool.
I'm not a musician, so I don't know that I'm, well positioned to like give you all of the musical detail of it, but I just love it. It's got vibraphone in it. It's
Ooh, I
just
love a
like,
vibraphone. Love a
I
vibraphone.
remember that from like Mr. Rogers as a kid or whatever, but like hearing vibraphone played by somebody that's got this just like, they're so cool,
Cool.
like blues sophistication going on. I don't know. I just feel like so cool when I listen to that track. Yeah. Idle
Okay, I
Moments.
haven't heard this before. I don't know any Grant Green, so this is gonna go on immediately following this. Can't wait.
Nice.
I love
I hope you
vibraphone.
enjoy.
Yes, big fan. Yes. Sick. And shameless plugs. We already talked about Delta. Is there anything else you'd like to plug?
No, that's really it. Check out delta.dev. It's a new way to collaborate with agents and your team, written on all the same tech stack as Zed, um, and a lot more.
Sick. And it's awesome. So check it out. Thank you so much, Nathan. This has been
Yeah, appreciate
totally
it.
cool. Yeah.
Really
Blew
appreciate
my
the
mind.
opportunity. Oh, I'm
Yeah.
talking over you again.
No, talk over.
Okay.
Yes. And fellow Colorado folk, we got to get together sometime. So
Agreed. That would be great.
yeah, for
Sign me
sure.
up.
Sick.
Okay, well, until then, it's been good.